The apartment sat quiet on the last night of the year. A single lamp cast warm light across the small living room where Ethan Cole sat alone at a table meant for two. His dinner had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. Through the window, distant fireworks popped and crackled over the Chicago skyline, their colors blooming and fading like promises no one intended to keep. He picked up his phone and dialed his mother's house, keeping his voice light when 7-year-old Nora answered with a sleepy hello. He told her he loved her, told her to have sweet dreams, told her daddy was having a great time. When he hung up, the silence rushed back in. Then came the knock. Ethan didn't move at first. He lived in a modest building in Lincoln Park, the kind of place where neighbors nodded politely but rarely visited. At this hour, on and this night, a knock at his door made no sense. He pushed back from the table and crossed the room slowly, his footsteps quiet on the hardwood floor. When he opened the door, the last person he expected to see was standing in his hallway. Vivian Hale wore a charcoal wool coat over what looked like expensive clothes, the kind that cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her face held that controlled expression he'd seen in company meetings, the one that revealed nothing. But something was different tonight. Her eyes moved too quickly, taking in his apartment with the sharp assessment of someone cataloging details they didn't expect to need. "Mr. Cole," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was a tension beneath it that Ethan couldn't place. "Miss Hale." He stood in the doorway, very aware of the contrast between them. She was the CEO of Meridian Technologies, a company that employed nearly 4,000 people across 3 states. He was a facilities engineer who made sure the building systems ran smoothly and the lights stayed on. They had spoken exactly twice in the 3 years he'd worked there, both times in elevators, both times about the weather. "I need to speak with you," she said, "now." Ethan glanced back at his cold dinner, his empty apartment, the television playing a New Year's countdown he'd muted an hour ago. Part of him wanted to ask how she'd found his address, why she'd come here, what could possibly be so urgent on New Year's Eve. Instead, he stepped aside and let her in. Vivian walked into his living room like she was entering a conference room, her posture straight, her movements precise. But once inside, she seemed uncertain where to stand. Her eyes moved from the modest furniture to the children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, from the single plate of food to the window where fireworks still painted the sky. "You have a daughter," she said. It wasn't a question. She was looking at a photograph on the bookshelf, a picture of Ethan and Nora at the zoo, both of them laughing at something the camera hadn't captured. "Nora, she's 7. She's spending the holiday with her grandmother." Ethan didn't offer more. He'd learned early in his career that people like Vivian Hale didn't make small talk, and they certainly didn't show up at employees' apartments at midnight to discuss family photos. Vivian turned from the photograph. In the soft light of his living room, she looked younger than she did in the office and more tired. "I apologize for the intrusion. I know this is irregular." "Irregular is one word for it. I couldn't think of anyone else." She said it simply without drama, but the admission seemed to cost her something. Vivian Hale, who commanded boardrooms and made decisions worth millions, couldn't think of anyone else to talk to on New Year's Eve. The clock struck midnight. Somewhere outside, cheers erupted from neighboring apartments, and the fireworks intensified into their grand finale. Neither of them acknowledged it. They stood in Ethan's small living room, two people who shouldn't have anything in common. While the world celebrated the turning of the year, Vivian moved to his window and stood with her back to him, watching the fireworks die down. "There's a decision I have to make after the holiday, something significant." She paused, and Ethan watched her reflection in the glass. "I've been going over the numbers, the projections, the legal implications. I've consulted attorneys and financial advisors and board members who tell me exactly what they think I want to hear." "And what do they tell you?" "That I should proceed, that it's the rational choice, that the market will respond favorably." She turned to face him. "But none of them tell me the truth. None of them care about the truth. They care about their positions, their bonuses, their proximity to power." Ethan leaned against his kitchen counter, arms crossed. He was still trying to understand why she was here in his apartment, speaking to him like they were colleagues rather than a CEO and a man who fixed heating systems for a living. "With respect, Miss Hale, I'm not sure what you think I can offer. I'm not exactly part of your inner circle." "That's precisely why I'm here." Vivian's voice sharpened slightly. "You have no stake in telling me what I want to hear. You have no political position to protect. According to your personnel file, you've been offered promotions 3 times and declined each one. You're either the most unambitious man in the company or the most principled. Either way, you're the only person I could think of who might actually be honest with me. The mention of his personnel file should have bothered him, but Ethan found himself more intrigued than offended. Whatever was troubling Vivian Hale, it was significant enough to send her across the city on New Year's Eve, to stand in a stranger's apartment, to admit vulnerability to someone she barely knew. "What's the decision?" he asked. Vivian's expression flickered just for a moment, and Ethan glimpsed something beneath the controlled surface. Fear, maybe, or exhaustion. "I can't tell you the specifics. Not yet, but I need you to understand something." She stepped closer, lowering her voice as though someone might overhear them in his empty apartment. "The people who advise me, the board members, the executives, they don't see me as a person. They see me as a position, a signature, a means to their own ends. I've built this company for 8 years, and I don't trust a single one of them." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan had worked in corporate environments long enough to know that loneliness existed at every level, but hearing it stated so plainly by someone at the very top was different. Vivian Hale had everything the world said should make a person successful, and yet here she was, alone at midnight, searching for someone who would tell her the truth. "You don't know me," Ethan said carefully. "How do you know you can trust me?" "I don't." Vivian met his eyes directly. "But I've watched you for 3 years. I've seen how you interact with the cleaning staff, the security guards, the interns everyone else ignores. I've read your emails, the ones where you advocated for better safety equipment for your team, the ones where you pushed back against budget cuts that would have affected the maintenance staff's benefits." She paused. "You treat people like they matter. That's rarer than you might think." Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He glanced at the screen and saw Nora's face. A video call coming through. His daughter should have been asleep hours ago. "I need to take this," he said, reaching for the phone. Part of him expected Vivian to object, to remind him that she was his CEO and her time was valuable. Instead, she simply nodded and turned back to the window, giving him what privacy she could in the small space. Ethan answered the call, and Nora's face filled the screen, her dark hair mussed from sleep, her eyes bright with excitement. "Daddy, Grammy let me stay up for midnight. Did you see the fireworks? Did you make a wish?" He smiled, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease at the sight of her. "I saw them, sweetheart. They were beautiful. Did you make a wish?" "I wished for a puppy, and I wished you weren't alone tonight. Grammy said you might be lonely." Ethan's heart clenched. 7 years old and she was already worrying about him. "I'm okay, Nora. I promise. Daddy's having a good night." "Do you have a friend there? Grammy says everyone needs friends on New Year's." Ethan glanced at Vivian, who was still facing the window but clearly listening. "Actually, yes. An old friend stopped by to say hello." "That's good." Nora yawned, her eyelids drooping. "I'm glad you're not alone, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart. Now go to sleep. I'll see you tomorrow." When the call ended, Ethan looked up to find Vivian watching him. Her expression had shifted in a way he couldn't quite define, something softer around the edges, something almost vulnerable. "She worries about you," Vivian said quietly. "She's 7. She shouldn't have to worry about anything." Ethan set his phone down. "But kids see more than we give them credit for. They know when something's wrong, even if they don't have the words for it." Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, stripped of its professional veneer. "I used to worry about my father. He ran the company before me, before it was public, before any of this." She gestured vaguely at herself, at everything she represented. "He worked constantly. I barely knew him. By the time I was old enough to understand what he did, I'd already learned that the company would always come first. Family dinners were scheduled between meetings. Birthdays were celebrated whenever his calendar allowed. I grew up believing that was normal." "Was it?" "It was what I knew." Vivian moved to his couch and sat down, the first time she'd allowed herself to settle since arriving. "My mother left when I was 11. She said she couldn't compete with a building full of employees for my father's attention. He didn't even fight for her. He just let her go and went back to work the next morning." Ethan didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. He simply listened, sensing that what Vivian needed wasn't comfort, but witness. Someone to hear the truth she'd never been allowed to speak. "I promised myself I'd be different," she continued. I'd make decisions based on data, not emotion. I'd treat every choice as a calculation, weighing costs and benefits, minimizing risk. I built walls around everything that might make me weak. She looked up at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw the woman behind the title. But now I'm facing something that doesn't fit into a spreadsheet. The decision I have to make affects people, not just numbers. And I don't trust myself to make it correctly because I've spent so long learning not to feel anything. Ethan crossed the room and sat in the chair across from her. What is it you're afraid of? That I'll make the wrong choice because there's no one left to tell me to stop. No one who cares about anything except what I can do for them. The apartment fell silent except for the distant sounds of celebrations still drifting up from the streets.